Hello, and welcome to the first ever edition of Looking Up at the Big Sky. I'm Sue Dalby with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers at the Fort Peck Interpretive Center.
I'm Katie Aiello. I work with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service at the Fort Peck Interpretive Center.
And I'm Virginia Rux, a meteorologist at the National Weather Service in Glasgow, Montana.
If you haven't yet, tell us where you're joining from in the comments. And if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please type them in the comments section. We will respond to all of your questions there during and after the presentation.
There's an exciting event happening soon. We are having a supermoon and lunar eclipse. If you're looking up at the big sky early in the morning on Wednesday, May 26th, you may be able to catch a super flower blood moon.
Virginia, what is a super flower blood moon?
That's a good question, Sue. It's a combination of full moon types, a supermoon, a blood moon, and a flower moon. A flower moon is a full moon in May when flowers are usually in bloom. Blood moon is a full moon in total eclipse, and it appears red. And finally, what is a supermoon? A supermoon is when the moon appears bigger and brighter than usual to a person looking at the moon from Earth. A supermoon is usually in perigee, which is the point in the moon's orbit closest to Earth. The opposite of a supermoon is called a micromoon, and this is where the moon is in apogee, the point in its orbit farthest from Earth. There were a couple of supermoons so far in 2021, and there will be two more this year. This one coming up on May 26th and again in June. Fun fact, supermoons appear 14% brighter and 30% brighter than a micromoon. Not only will this event be a supermoon, it will also be a lunar eclipse. A lunar eclipse occurs when the sun, earth, and moon align in such a way that the sun's light reaching the earth will cast a shadow onto the surface of the moon. You may or may not have heard the terms umbra and penumbra. Have you heard these words before? The umbra and penumbra are descriptors for different parts of the Earth's shadow. These are strange sounding words you don't hear every day, and it can be difficult to remember what they mean. Umbra means shadow in Latin, and the prefix pen in penumbra is Latin for almost. So penumbra literally translates to almost shadow. Scientists seem to love globally universal terms, and Latin terminology is common in science. If you've ever seen a lunar eclipse before, do you remember what you saw? The sun is putting out so much light energy that sometimes the light scatters around the edges of the Earth, even though it is still casting a shadow. The various interactions of lightness and darkness is similar to how your shadow on a sunny day isn't completely black, and the outline of your shadow is somewhat fuzzy. You just happen to block a good portion of that sunlight. The umbra is the most concentrated, cone-shaped part of the Earth's shadow. And in this stage, the moon takes on a reddish glow. If you've seen a lunar eclipse before, you might be familiar with seeing this. Some of the light is passing through and being scattered around Earth's relatively shallow atmosphere. You can associate this reddish hue similarly to how sunsets are more red to the naked eye. Light is being scattered through numerous particles of Earth's atmosphere, and your eyes see this as red.
Virginia, I have a question about this eclipse viewing. It's been a few years since I've looked at an eclipse, but the last time I watched one, I needed to take a couple of special precautions to protect my eyes. Is that something that we need to worry about with this eclipse?
That's a good question, Katie. No, You won't need any special equipment. All you need is just your regular viewing optics. But if you do see the sun, see a solar eclipse next time, make sure to have that eye protection there.
Virginia has a fun activity we would like to demonstrate for you that will show you how the sun, earth, and the moon interact with each other to create your very own eclipse right at your fingertips. You can do this on your own or with others.
Would you like to make your own eclipse? All you'd need is a yardstick, a couple of binder clips, a couple of toothpicks, 1/4 inch pony bead, 1-inch diameter ball or Play-Doh. Make sure that you place your pony bead and your ball about 30 inches apart. The 1/4 inch pony bead represents the moon and the 1-inch ball represents the earth. The moon is approximately 1/4 the diameter of the earth. So this is a representative scale of the moon and the earth. It's helpful to have a light background so that when you're doing your demonstration, you can see the shadows. The sun shines down on the earth and casts a shadow onto the moon. Now we're ready to demonstrate.
Most of the eclipse will be visible from the west coast, but the further east you are, the less you'll be able to see. This is because the eclipse is occurring low on the horizon and will occur further below the horizon as you are located further east within North America. Here in northeast Montana, the eclipse is occurring right at sunrise and moonset. We should be able to see the first stages to the maximum eclipse phase before the moon finally drops below the horizon. That means that you will need to try to find a flat and wide open viewing location with yourself in an elevated position relative to the horizon. The moon's orbit isn't perfectly aligned, so it won't pass perfectly horizontal or centered, but it will be enough to put on a great show. Here's a photo provided by NASA's Scientific Visualization Studio of how the moon will transit within the penumbral and umbral stages of the May 26th lunar eclipse. I did mention scientists like universal terms, right? They also like universal measurements too. The timeline in the graphic is in universal time, but we've transcribed this to our local Montana time for you. The penumbral eclipse begins at 2:47 a.m. and then passes into the umbral area, and that umbral eclipse begins at 3:45 a.m. Then about 5:11 a.m., the total eclipse begins, and then by 5:15 a.m., we have our sunrise. That'll be within minutes of our maximum eclipse time of 5:18 a.m. Make sure you've got your eyes pointed to the west-southwest, very close to the horizon. And then by 5:22 a.m., the moon sets. Once the moon's below the horizon, you won't be able to see the eclipse anymore, but the total eclipse will end at 5:26 a.m. The umbral part will be over at 6:52 a.m. And finally, the penumbral eclipse ends at 7:49 a.m.
This sounds like an amazing experience. But Virginia, can you tell us, is the weather going to get in the way?
Well, consider wearing warm clothes because the low temperatures will be in the upper 30s north of the High Line and lower 40s for most places. We will be fortunate enough to have light winds. However, we don't necessarily have a home run with clear skies. Partly cloudy skies are expected early in the eclipse phase, with increasing clouds and a slight chance of showers increasing over the morning hours. But as always, the weather can change slightly. Check weather.gov/ggw for the latest. And if the weather does cooperate and you take any photos, we would love to see them on our social media. So, Sue, Katie, do you have any suggested viewing locations, particularly for viewing this west-southwest horizon and placing the viewer in an elevated position?
Yeah, we sure do, Virginia. There are several locations near Fort Peck where you will be able to see the eclipse. Flat Lake over on the east side of the dam, Lewis and Clark Overlook is also a good site, and Duck Creek Recreation Area. All of those areas offer a good view for the eclipse over Fort Peck Lake, which would be a great backdrop. Camping is also available at Flat Lake and Duck Creek if you want to avoid an early morning drive to go view that eclipse in those locations.
And again, please share any photos or viewing experiences with us on social media using the hashtag looking up at the big sky. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We will be sticking around for a few minutes to answer any questions in the comments. Stay tuned to the Fort Peck Project Facebook page for updates on our June program. We can't wait to look up at the big sky with you then.